Now let's return to our top story, the pause in that indefinite strike here in Nigeria over demands to increase the minimum wage. The decision comes after the federal government improved its pay offer to labor unions in an attempt to end the strike, which has already caused nationwide disruption. It's not clear yet how much the government is prepared to offer, but it said it'll be over 60,000 naira or $42 a month, which still falls far short of the 494,000 naira or $341 the unions have been demanding. The government is scheduled to meet union leaders every day for a week as they work towards a permanent resolution. So what could come of this? Well, for more, I'm joined now in the studio by Arise political editor Sambo. Good to see you. Sumner, so the strike has been suspended. First of all, how do you assess the impact of that one-day walkout?
Yeah, I mean, it really shook everyone. Most Nigerians were not prepared for it in the sense that they knew there was going to be a strike, but the thinking was that Labour will call it off as usual, maybe by midnight and all of that, and there will be no strike. So they actually took it for granted, and only for them to walk to the banks and all of that, petrol stations, only to see that the strike actually had some effect. And then, of course, once the national grid was shut down by the striking workers, that's when they could actually feel the effect. And then the airports, the domestic flights were actually shut. And so people started feeling the impact of the strike. But I had, in my own thinking, I think it was more of like a win-win. The labor union leaders could have said that, okay, yes, the government approached them prior to yesterday, and they would want to actually consider the government's negotiation, but the government should allow them go ahead with at least a day for the strike to go on, because they had been losing their credibility over the years, and not many Nigerians thought that, I mean, anything good could come out of it, and it just looked like one of those threats. So it's a win-win for the labor unions in the sense that at least the government gave them a day to actually show that they have the capacity to hold a full-fledged strike, while they have been able to step down and get back to the negotiating table, which is good for Nigerians.
But potentially, obviously, it could have been much worse, both for the government
but
and
after 2 or 3
for the
days,
Nigerian people if it had continued.
After 2 or 3 days, Charles, most Nigerians don't have the capacity to continue to go along with the NLC, and they know that too. And so they are, you know, there's a way they politicize the issue too, and they also have to
posturing.
Posturing and then strategizing and knowing the capacity of the average Nigerian to be able to bear the brunt of the strike. Because once it goes beyond 2 days, then you begin to lose goodwill. So it's a tactic that has worked for them this time around. But in reality, have we really achieved so much? Well, that's what many Nigerians will be asking now, because what exactly is the card on the table? I mean, these are just mere words being used, that the government is promising that it will add something. What's that something?
Nevertheless, negotiations are continuing.
Yes, that's the good part of it.
Yeah, but is it your assessment that the labor unions may now have the upper hand in those negotiations following what appears to be a consequential strike?
There's no how the labor will be having an upper hand in this strike. The best way they would have had an upper hand is if they had continued with the strike, went into day 2, day 3, and the government actually sees their capacity. But now the government, you could see from the statement, the agreement that was reached from both parties, it actually looked like the labor union succumbed at some point. Because that statement wasn't weighty as we had expected. For you to say that, yeah, you're willing to actually go above 60,000. I mean, going above 60,000 could be 65,000, it could be 62,000, 63, it could actually be 70. But what analysts are saying is that shouldn't the labor unions be considering the $100 offer that we used to have in the past when they go on strike? And they'll say that, look, can we have the average worker earning $100 a month? If you do that, that means we will be thinking about between 140 to 150,000 naira per worker. But at this stage now, at what we are and what the government is offering, it's far, far below what every Nigerian knows can sustain a working family. And Charles, as it stands right now, the government has to show some very good commitment, because the inflationary pressures are just too much on the average Nigerian. Imagine those who are not even working. And then for those who are working, it's getting way beyond the means of the average worker. And then what happens? The multiplier effect is that there will be crime. Lots of people are not able to meet their needs, and then they continue to constitute a menace. And then people are unable to pay school fees, and children get out of, they drop out of school. And so the government has to really consider this, because we are saying that the government itself had issues. Why did they have to wait until April 8th when the national minimum wage was going to expire for them to increase the tempo of negotiation? Why are we acting as if we didn't know that there was the need to have a new minimum wage before April 8th? So there are several issues, and the National Salaries and Incomes and Wages Commission is supposed to have met earlier today with the labor unions to talk about some of these issues. But I thought that statutory body was in place to prevent crises like this, because if we continue to go in a shutdown, even the government will be forced to act drastically, because you could see that the workers were erratic, going to shut down the national grid, for example, and then shutting down government offices. Yeah, they can actually do that in 1, 2, or 3 days, but they cannot sustain that going forward. So the government itself should not appear as if they've lost the capacity to be able to set an agenda before it happens. What we are asking is that President Tinubu should take a look at having long-time sustainable solutions to this minimum wage crisis, because it's not only Nigeria that happens to. So why must we make it look like until the deadline expires before we do that? When we do have a new minimum wage, there will be a specific timeline that it will expire. So there should be sustainable solutions, not just a one-time solution.
That's a good point. And we're hearing that if they return to their strike, that the oil workers union, the NUPENG, are now threatening to also join, which would have quite an impact on the
disastrous
economy.
Yeah, I mean, because of course, our major earnings come from oil sales and all of that. So it's good that NUPENG didn't really join the strike. And so if the government, we've seen the ministers actually meeting with President Bola Tinubu today, and it gives room for the president to actually sit and have a clear look at what to do. I thought that himself and the ministers would just sit down and actually look for a drastic solution to it. Because shifting it to the Minister of Finance right now to go and still talk or do 1 or 2 things may delay certain things. Because the president knows what the average Nigerian is going through as a result of the removal of the fuel subsidy. So if we're able to see, even if it's calling a federal cabinet meeting, a special federal executive council meeting, to be able to take a holistic look at what can be deemed minimal for the average Nigerian worker, it will be good, because the labor itself had to go way up until asking for over 400,000, because they know that the government wouldn't issue a particular figure that's workable. So it's that fear that made labor actually
go that high,
go that
and then
high.
hopefully it'll settle somewhere.
But
in
at the heart of this, Charles, is that the basic services in the economy are not working. If the worker can pay his school fees easily through government funds or programs, if there's good transportation, if you can get some loans or mortgage or things like that, you wouldn't get to a situation whereby workers will be demanding so high.
Absolutely.
It's because of the failure of the government to put in place some of these things that's making the workers' unions to actually ask for higher amounts. Because even if we go to $100 per worker, would that be able to actually solve the issues of housing, transportation, schooling for children and all of that?
That's
it wouldn't. So the government should continue to concentrate on providing basic services, basic necessities, and then it will reduce the tendency for workers to want to ask for higher minimum wages.
And also prevent the possibility of inflation, because when you're paying people more, prices go up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the huge challenge that we have. That's why I'm saying that we should look for sustainable solutions, not just one time. Because if you look for one time and you don't improve on the basic necessities, then of course we'll keep having these issues every now and then, and there'll be a government shutdown.
Thank you very much indeed. Sambo is Arise Political.